So welcome once again to the Honest Conversations with Christina Mand-Lakhiani, and my guest today is Wei Houng. Hi, Wei Houng.
Hi.
I was trying to pronounce it properly, but I know that, Chinese is a tonal language, and I might have mistaken the tone because my ear is not trained for that. But yes, my guest today is Wei Houng, and I'll make the official introduction and then we'll have the conversation. So as a trained and certified technologist of human optimization, Wei Houng has made it his passion, purpose, and goal to help people uncover and optimize their unique vehicle of self so that they can untether from the constructs of previous realities that contribute to chronic self-sabotage of today. He's an author, podcaster, and creator of the Prosperity Breakthrough System. For almost 30 years, he has worked with celebrities, industry thought leaders, and thousands of entrepreneurs all over the world to unlock and define their one unique path to a prosperous life. He blends a unique cocktail of modalities that's grounded in science and quantum physics and elevated through spirituality to help his students and clients break through their blocks so they can feed their passions and fund their purpose. So this is the official introduction. I always find so responsible for the official introduction, but the unofficial introduction is that it's not our first conversation. And I know that, we can give you the topic, but actually Wei Houng is such a deep person that I think we can talk about anything with you, can't we?
Well, you and I can, for sure.
So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. But what we have announced for today is your unique code to happiness and success. And before we went into this conversation, I was wondering to myself, and sorry if it's a little bit too geeky of me to ask that, but where's the main emphasis in the topic that we have chosen? Is it about your unique code, or is it more about happiness and success that we are going to talk about today?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because happiness and success is very subjective. And so the main emphasis really is on the individual behind that journey, right? The unique code that lives within every single one of us that will give us the ability to define, as you and I have spoken many times, our unique definition of what happiness is and what success is. So, yeah, so I think the emphasis is so much more on the code itself that lives within all of us, so that it can facilitate the unique definitions of happiness and success for each and every single one of us.
So if we go into this conversation, I want to maybe go deeper about the idea of you just said that success and happiness are unique. Yet we use these terms quite freely and quite frequently, and also without giving maybe a lot of weight to that. We throw around both happiness and success, and I think maybe it's not even fair to talk about them together because the meaning that we give to both are quite polar opposite. So. How important do you think it is for people to actually sit down and think about what makes them happy, what is success for them? I don't think the society has that idea of questioning those two terms. We kind of use them ambiguously in a way, right?
Yeah, and you're so right about that. And quite frankly, what I found in our work is it's what keeps a lot of us stuck in this kind of like cycle of life. It's interesting because if all of us were to sit down in this moment and think about what does happiness actually mean to us, and I actually just did a presentation yesterday where everybody was given an exercise to write down 5 words that define happiness, right? And it was interesting because nobody had the exact same 5 words, which lends to that understanding of our own personal individual quantum existence, which is everybody's different. Everybody defines things differently. Yeah, there might be a few little crossovers just because we're all raised in the same planet, right? And through conversation, like you're saying, we throw it around. But at some point in our lives, in order for us to have the best life, and it's interesting, happiness and success, as much as they are separate, we kind of want to, we always strive to put those together because don't we want to be successfully happy or happily successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is also the challenge of having two separate definitions of happiness and success, and then finding a way to merge those two so they synchronously work together in the ecosystem of your own life. So taking the time to sit down and really explore, well, what does happiness truly mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
And also in the context of success is, well, what is my definition of success? Not what my parents told me what it means to be successful, not what schools told me to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
not what Christina or Wei told me that, what success is. What is my unique definition of success, and what does that mean to me? It's funny because we see the stats all the time. I don't know. I kind of geek out every once in a while, and I look at the annual rankings for the happiest countries of the world. Do you look for that at all?
I sometimes look at them, but I'm such a skeptic inside that I always have more questions than I have answers when I see anything like that. I always want to ask. So before we rank, can we first give me the definition, and then
Right.
all those things.
Right. And so I think they some of these ranking systems, they have a pretty good framework. They say, here are what we use for our critique, in terms of how we kind of ranked everybody. And a lot of it was like quality of life, laughter, joy, happiness, some depending on how you want to define it. And, most of the time it's the ones that are on top of the list tend to be the countries that you don't think about, the countries that you don't know about, right?
Bhutan.
Yeah, exactly. Right, some random place, and then it opens up the curiosity, of course. Then you learn more about what's going on, and you realize it's a very humbling experience for me every single time, because I realize they don't have half the things that I have. They don't have the pleasures of half the pleasures that I have, and yet they are part of that group that is perceived, at least, to be the happiest, right? And so every time I do it, it's kind of like a personal journey of mine to explore, well, what is defining my happiness now? If I think I'm happy, and yet I'm not part of that ecosystem that is ranked as the happiest, am I happy in my own little place, in my own little world? Or am I buying into some other definition of happiness that may not necessarily be mine?
So I have to ask this before we go on any further or any deeper, because I had so many questions in my mind, but a secondary question to all those questions was, but do we even have the right to discuss that? Because you just said happiness and success are unique definitions. So does it make even sense for me to, for example, to ask you about your definition, since it's uniquely yours, and people who are listening to us, they're supposed to have their definitions, right?
Right. And so it comes back to this, is that, ultimately at the end of the day, what contributes to human conflict is the fact that we're constantly trying to compare ourselves and judge the world around us, right? And part of that journey around happiness comes back to whether or not, first and foremost, you're willing to define what happiness is. And then the next step is are you willing to own it, independent of what anybody else thinks? And part of the journey of being able to do that and having the courage to do that is also being able to accept other people's definition of what happiness means to them, right? And so in a way, it's a way for us to support each other in this exercise of objectivity, of honoring the uniqueness of every human being on the planet, and thus being able to then honor the uniqueness of yourself, right?
So the question number one, which I want to ask you, is this: what's the relationship between happiness and success, in your opinion?
So that discussion, a lot of the work that we do around helping our clients and our students kind of align those two, was derived from a conversation I had with one of my mentors many, many, many years ago. And he was part of one of the largest OEM manufacturers in the .com boom, sold it, became a billionaire and everything like that, had a lot of mentees. And he knew, and he was mentoring me on the work that I do in terms from a business standpoint. And he was telling me while we were sitting down at a Burger King, I think it was, because he liked eating there. It's really odd. So I just sat there and drank water and watched him eat very unhealthy food. But I said, okay, well, to each their own, right? And then he said to me, he says, I have a very wealthy, almost a billionaire client. I said, okay. And he comes to me for a lot of business mentorship. And I said, great. And he said, but he came to me the other day with a question. And he said, Jimmy, that's my mentor's name. He goes, how do I be happier? How do I make my wife happier? How do I help my wife make me happier? To which my mentor said, I can't answer that question for you because that's not my expertise, right? And what I love about him is that he's a mentor to these really successful people, and yet he still has the ability to say, I don't know.
Yeah,
right?
it's such a fair answer, honestly.
Right.
And refreshing as well in our industry.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so he said, but I know somebody that can help you with that. And to which that's why we were having that conversation. And in that conversation, we realized there was a big systemic problem in the world we live today, especially in the technology world. I don't know if I told you, I just recently moved back to Silicon Valley. So I'm around this tech area a lot now. And there's a concept called, and I think you and I have spoken about this a few times before, called money rich, happiness poor. Money rich, purpose poor. And I think the issue that we see, the reason why we see a lot of that in the world today is that somehow we've been raised to separate the two, that they are exclusive of each other and that they need to be in their own little tiny ecosystem, forgetting that the common denominator behind everything that we do for happiness and everything that we do for success is one single thing. There is a human being behind it all. So the importance of having sustainable success, however you define it to be, means that you got to be happy with what you're doing, right? And we talk about that all the time. And I think some of the fundamentals of Mind Valley, right, is about that passion and being driven and purpose and motivation around doing what it is that you do. I don't think anybody wants to be unhappily successful. I mean, maybe. Right. But so I think our journey around when we're redefining our unique definition of what happiness is and our definition of what success is, at some point we want to find out, okay, what is the harmonic? Okay, just kind of what we were talking about before we started today. The beautiful language of music is that it is beyond human language. We didn't create harmonics. The universe already had it in its existence. We just figured out how to translate it and replicate it and duplicate it with the instruments that we've invented.
And write it down and read it again centuries
Exactly.
down the road.
Exactly. And to be able to nail it down so that it doesn't just disappear into the ether again, right? That is the brilliance behind humanity. What we've been able to do is to capture that which the universe has given to us from day one, and then to be able to leverage that so that we become better stewards of the universe and become part of the universe, right?
You know, what really struck me right now is this idea of mutual exclusivity, because one thing is the definition of the words, the other thing is how we feel about the two phenomena, like relating to each other. And actually, I think you have triggered something which I'll have to think over for the next few days. But since I haven't started thinking, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole. What I want to ask is this question, which I have been pondering a little bit on. I feel that contemporary society doesn't take happiness seriously enough. Right. We don't talk about that like we talk about nutrition or exercise.
Right.
What do you think needs to change for us to actually crack happiness? Because there's research about happiness, but what you hear is usually don't chase it. Right.
Just be it.
Yeah.
Right. I think the challenge is a lot of it comes from how a lot of us are raised at a very young age. And we've all experienced this. We've been chastised for being happy out of context. Right. right? We need to go to school, and and then the kids like sitting there playing and having a happy, good old time, and the adult says, "This is out of context. We don't have time to observe you and enjoy you in this moment being happy. Shut it down. Let's do it later." Right?
Be serious.
Be serious. Grow up. You have to be more mature, right? And the implication around that is being serious and being mature means absence of laughter, joy, happiness, maybe, just depending on what culture you've been raised in, what society is dictating in that moment, what schools you've gone to even, right? When I grew up, I went to UCLA for college, but then I also visited a lot of my other friends in different UCs. Every college had a different vibe. Every college had a different, and university had a different frequency of joy and happiness. It was really fascinating. You go to Santa Barbara, which is notoriously known as the party school, and you feel that happiness, joy, party vibe, right? And then you go to some other university like Berkeley, which is a little bit, to be honest, my sister went there, and every time I go there, there's this darkness that just hangs over there. I mean, it's a brilliant school that produces brilliant human beings. And at the same time, it's a completely different sensation when you're there. So I think a lot of the challenge comes from how we are thinking that we should be raised as human beings in the current culture and society that we know it. And I think if there needs to be a change, we can start there to start nurturing a different focus. Because you're right, society then regards happiness and joy almost, especially if you go in the corporate world, too much happiness, too much joy, it becomes a little bit flippant. It's like, okay, what a waste of time.
Unprofessional.
It's unprofessional.
Yeah.
Okay. One should
And
not
then,
laugh
and
too much.
that actually creates this mutual exclusivity. If
Yeah.
you want to be professional, you
Right.
have to tone down the
Right.
joy.
Exactly. And they've come up with memes and labels for people who are too happy, right?
Yeah.
Or who are very positive, right? They what's the word that I'm looking for here, which is someone who's a Pollyanna, right? Who is smiling all the time, laughing all the time, happy all the time, doesn't take life seriously, right? But rather, what if we flip the script and say, well, maybe she takes happiness very seriously.
You know, we for people who joined us when the time was to join and who didn't listen to our conversation before we went live, we were talking actually about Chinese language. And you know, I lived in Malaysia for 16 years, and one thing that struck me about Chinese culture, I do not know if I'm expressing it correctly because I was not very much exposed, but what I noticed that the Chinese temples in Malaysia, at least, actually quite focused on happiness and prosperity, which was so new to me because religion, at least in the Western context, is the opposite of that.
Right.
Which was actually really enjoyable, because I remember myself being 28, if I'm not mistaken, when I saw a poster at some of my relatives' house, my Asian relatives' house, that said, I don't remember what it said exactly, but the message was that it is actually okay to want to be happy and to take care of your own happiness. And I was standing there, I was 28. I was standing and I had an aha moment. I was thinking, like, I'm allowed to want to be happy?
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
It's just so strange. So yeah, I'm glad we actually somehow slid into this conversation about happiness, but I want to ask a slightly, maybe just turn this conversation a little bit. I know that you work on human optimization. That's one of the big things.
Yeah.
How does that connect to the topic of our today's conversation? Is it connected? Maybe it's something different.
No, absolutely. It is connected. And this is why I love this conversation. I loved every one of our conversations we've had thus far, even before today's call, is over the years when I've worked as a business consultant, a business strategist, a brand strategist, all within the context of work, because I thought success was just all about achieving business success, career success, and all these different things. One of the things that struck me as I moved more and more into the human optimization space was that no matter what kind of common denominator we're looking from a sales strategy standpoint, from an operational strategy standpoint, from an envisioning standpoint, all those different things that we do, we forget that one of the most basic denominators of everything is that there's a human being behind it all. If we want to create sustainable success and happiness and everything like that, it starts with making sure that the human being behind this endeavor and this journey of whatever that journey is optimized. And for years, I searched and searched and searched. And finally, after, there's a piece of technology that we use. It's, I think I mentioned it the last year when we had a conversation, you just kind of perked up a little bit. We have a patented human assessment technology. And it's only reason why we can patent it is because it's not psychometric based. It's based on the nature of the quantum physical expression of human nature. And it is a fascinating thing. 20 years of research.
Can you please explain it? What did you just say?
Yes. Okay, yeah. And this is the geekery that you and I get to kind of geek out. The quantum physical expression of human nature is the basis behind the patent of this technology. 20 years ago, one of my business partners, Dr. Zana Hackett, she was the one that explored and posed the question, as good as these other assessments are out there, there is a fundamental challenge is that all of them are psychometric based, which is better than nothing. Psychometric based, in the simplest term, is based on human opinion and perspective, which you and I both know is the most volatile side of human existence. This is why personal development around the mindset and perspective and opinion works so well, because we're so malleable in that regard. At a flip of a dime, we could change our perspective, change our belief system, right? So if it's such a moving target, how can we truly accurately assess and honor that uniqueness of that human being in that moment without calibrating on something that may have happened earlier that day? And so her being a genius with a background in human behavioral sciences and quantum physics and all those different things, she started to, and this is the way geniuses work. They hang out with other geniuses. Her boyfriends were like Mensa people and all that stuff, And so, it's very rare that someone could deep dive into quantum physics with me and lose me. And she did that, and which was like amazing. I said, we need to bring this out to the world. And so the technology is based on the three main pillars of quantum mechanics, which is gravity, nuclear force, and electromagnetism. Without those fundamental pillars, so to speak, and I'm simplifying. There's a few other things, but quantum mechanics is essentially those three. Without any of those three, none of us would exist. Physical expression as we know it would not be there. Every physical object has a gravitational expression. Within the living object, because of everything that happens to us, there are nuclear forces that happen every single day, simply by eating, breathing, and everything. The translation of what we consume and bring into our ecosystem of our human body that then it's a nuclear force, right? And of course, within that, in order for those things to happen, electromagnetism needs to exist, the positive and negative polarities and everything like that. Well, the brilliance and the genius behind what Dr. Zana did was she was able to find and crack the code, so to speak, to translate how that then gets expressed uniquely in every human being. Okay, to put it more simply, if you look at a Ferrari and a Hummer and a Prius, you can tell just by looking at those vehicles how they can potentially perform, how they're designed to perform. Imagine being able to see every human being the exact same way. This finally answered this question that I got into trouble a lot when I was little growing up. I would always ask this question where other people were asking, why is the sky blue? Why is the sky blue? I'm asking questions like, why does everybody look different? And I knew at a very young age, there was something there that there's a pattern to that uniqueness that everybody has. And what this technology was finally able to do, which brought me to emotional kind of elation when I found out and I realized the science behind it, is that it finally answers the question, why everybody looks different, and how through the translation of the unique gravitational force of that human being expression of self, the nuclear forces that live within them, the electromagnetic polarities that float around in the ions inside them, it actually impacts our motivational drivers, our communication styles, how the unique vehicle of ourselves, and how we can then leverage and honor that vehicle to create our unique path of happiness, success, everything that we want to do. And that's why we've been able to make that big promise that we can show every human being their unique way of making money in this lifetime, their unique way of creating happiness and maintaining happiness in their lifetime, because it's based around honoring their unique vehicle of self.
It sounds a little bit like a movie to me. Science just sounds too complex, like, you know, sci-fi or something.
Right.
How does that look practically? For, maybe not the test yet. I'll ask you about the test in the next question. But how does that translate? Like, I get my results. What do I do with them, or what kind of results do I get? How can you apply that knowledge in your life?
Yeah.
You said that right now to some degree, but if you could give a more practical example, would be helpful.
Yes, I that's a great question, because that's a lot of what we do with these. We primarily work with a lot of powerfully ambitious leaders that struggle with, you know, the day-to-day having to micromanage their people, having to babysit, so to speak, and put out fires that just from the unique combination of human beings that happen. And one of the tools that they use is this technology so that they can create a custom ecosystem and a custom culture in their organization so that it honors every human being there. The interesting thing is, when someone takes it, it's really simple. It's a 10-minute online assessment. And again, this is the genius behind it all. There's an algorithm that sits behind translating the answers that come from those questions to then produce a unique grid, a mathematical grid of numbers and everything that gives the results. And what I loved about this is that, unlike other assessments where it kind of distills everybody down to like buckets or even a single number, it's like, oh, I'm very unique. I'm a 2. Okay, well, okay. And you're a 2 too. How are we different? Oh, 2 with a derivative. Okay, whatever. But the reality is this, is that when as many human beings as there are on the planet, there's that many unique results that get produced. An entire grid that represents that unique person, as unique as their thumbprint. You know, I saw Wendy put a comment here. It goes, oh, thank goodness we are unique. Yes. And you know what's so interesting is that, why do we even have to be grateful for that when we should be knowing that from day one, that we are unique and should be respected and honored and nurtured to embrace the fact that we are unique and different. I think a lot of the challenges that our kids are having today is because that we're trying to fit everybody into a bucket just so they could fit in, right? So how this can then be used is, once the results come through, you are actually given a very clear pathway and a code, basically your unlock code to unleashing your greatest limitless possibilities. We basically are able to reveal your motivational drivers. Imagine that, never having to guess how to keep yourself motivated ever again. And all you do is you spend your lifetime developing strategies around what it is that you want to do to make sure that you continue to be fed in the correct way to stay energized, right? Imagine understanding how you uniquely connect with the world, have a heart-centered connection with the world based on your unique communication styles. Okay, just to share a little bit of it, we found that most people fall into one of these 4 main categories of, they're either intellectual centered, or they're movement centered, or they're emotional centered, or they're instinctual centered, meaning that there is they tend to lean towards one of those 4 as a method of communication and consumption of information, right? Not everybody's intellectually centered. Some people are more emotionally centered. They're more tactile oriented. They're more about being with others, right? And there are people who have to move in order for them to be able to consume information or to connect with others, right? So there's all these different ways of doing it. And we're able to, through that technology, help people see themselves. And it almost never is a surprise for anybody. More often than not, when the results come out, people are going, oh my God, I feel so validated. I've had super powerful men and women who to some degree, sometimes feared by their constituents, so to speak, break down in tears, getting the results, And I think I remember one of them said, gripping the report in her hand with tears in her eyes, saying, "This way, this is what freedom truly feels like. The freedom to be able to just own yourself, your unique expression of self in this world, in this lifetime, so that you don't have to buy into any other construct except your own anymore." Which then, of course, opens up the pathway to your unique code of happiness, your unique code of success, your unique code of contribution to this world based on leveraging the power of your unique vehicle of self.
Of course, what I want to ask is probably, you said very correctly that a lot of tests put us into buckets, but let's say if we take even this style of communication where there are, you said roughly speaking, four ways how we connect with the world. And a lot of those tests and buckets have a little bit of social opinion around them, that it's better to be outgoing, for example, or cheerful, rather than maybe, well, I wouldn't use the word introverted, because introverted is not as looked down upon as it used to be 20 years ago.
Thank God. Yes.
So on one side, we kind of understand that there is no good or bad, it's just different.
Right.
But what does give people the sense of freedom when they get their unique results? They see that, oh, I'm the unpopular style of communication with the world, or the less common, or the less pleasant.
Yeah.
What gives them that sense of freedom?
It's that because all of our technologists are trained to deliver, because every time we get results, the results are delivered in a live fashion. We sit down with people for 90 minutes and we go over everything, because of just how profound and the different layers and how unique every human being is. It doesn't serve them to just give them a written report, because it doesn't do that human being justice. And so we actually have a very staunch rule. We don't deliver results just without a human being to be able to kind of help translate everything that's happening. What gives them that is the fact that the way it's delivered more often than not is there's a level of objectivity. There's no right or wrong, right? I mean, even as you said, the unpopular way, that's very much a human, labeled construct, right? Is like, okay, this way is unpopular. Well, that's a human thing. But what if we just looked at it, this is just is, right? Someone who is a more intellectually centered as a communication style, they're just going to be more pragmatic about their thought process, about the way they communicate. When they get into a conflict with somebody, they want to understand why this is happening. Whereas the emotional center person will just want to emote. Whether or not it makes sense, doesn't matter. And if we understand that every human being is different, because what happens when a human being embraces the fact that they're unique, they start to perceive the rest of the world and honor and respect the uniqueness of everybody else around them. They don't feel they need to defend themselves anymore. They can just be themselves and then be able to honor the other person as themselves. And when we talk about motivational drivers, we also introduce the idea of strong states and weak states. And I remember there are so many times where I've introduced this part of their unique vehicle of self, that people have broken down in tears because society and culture and their significant others and their loved ones have made them wrong for being a fallible human being, have made them wrong for being in a weak state. For example, there's a particular driver called creating order. For those that are driven that way, they love to create order. They love to make things neat. They like to create systems. They like to live a life in routine, right? Yeah. When they are doing that on a regular basis, they stay in a strong state. They stay in a, for lack of a better word, a positive state, right? But what happens is when life happens, if there's chaos, right, then there is a weak state of expression of that same driver. So there's your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. And the weak state of the creating order driver, we call it, well, in a way, it's controlling. Okay, it's manipulation. It's trying to, it's overbearing, right? It is the same driver, but just in a weaker state of expression. And when we are empowering the human being to understand that there's nothing wrong with them, they're simply in the weak state expression of themselves, that's when it gives this level of self-love, self-care, and self-forgiveness that no other technology I've seen out there has been able to afford human beings to uniquely do for themselves.
How can people do this test with you? Because it sounds incredibly interesting. Not even so much the test as the results.
Yeah, it's really simple, actually. You can go to humanoptech.com. And for everybody that's here today, I actually took the liberty of creating a little code so that people can get like 20% off or something like that. So I'll share that if I can share it now or I can share it later.
Yeah, you can share it.
Oh,
yes.
okay. Just it's the code is Mind Valley 2023.
Yay, good
Yay.
code.
Right. And it's for anybody that's coming from the Mind Valley tribe, get 20% off. And then what happens is all the information there, it's a very simple site. It just breaks it down really simply. It's a video of me talking about a little bit of technology. When you click through start here, there's another video that talks about like the geekery behind it and all these different things, so that those that want to learn more about it from a science standpoint, they can. And then if they want to take the assessment, they can take it, put in the code, get 20% off, and then you get assigned a technologist to go through your results and basically untether you, disconnect you from the matrix of you, if you will, of what has been keeping most of us stuck, and really give you an opportunity to see, oh, this is me. This is how I can use me in the most unique way possible to create everything that I want to create in my life. Now, there are layers to it because it's a whole new language, but once you get introduced to it and once you see it, it's very difficult to unsee yourself once you see it. Right? And there's that warning. There's my disclaimer. If you do this, right?
Yeah,
once
you can't
see yourself,
undo this.
you can't unsee yourself, right?
That's actually something that I also like to say when I talk about authenticity, but we can't go right now in that direction because we have Juan joining us.
Yay.
Actually, there are two Juans joining us.
1 times 2. That's perfect.
We've optimized Juans.
It's an opportunity for a new product. Dos Juans.
Sorry.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Juan. Hey.
Oh. Hey, the whole conversation is so really fabulous. I just love that subject. As I think we've been living in a society, as you said, that the least we talk about is happiness. It's all about, you know, money, and then this business or money driven concept is been, you know, taking us out of our path,
Right.
out of our real passion and how to find happiness when not even find it. So
Yes.
I found the whole conversation really amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a feeling that we do actually have two Juans, and one Juan is speaking, the other one is waving. But Juan, who is speaking, can you ask your question now?
Yes, my question was how can we do this assessment? Like how can we find more about the assessment that you've been mentioning, or he's been mentioned to us?
Yeah, it's really simple. You can go to humanoptech, which is humanoptech.com. And from there, you can click start here. Just remember the code Mind Valley now has for all of 2023 to be able to apply towards investing in that assessment. And then once you go in, as soon as it goes into the system algorithm will process your results, and then you'll be assigned a technologist to schedule a time with you to sit down with you one-on-one and then go through your entire results and untether you from all that you thought that you were supposed to be, to truly honor yourself in that way. So yeah, and there's an E missing from the human op tech, so it's TECH, right? Christina, do you think it'd be cool for me to demonstrate? So here's the beautiful thing. Because the technology is based on the quantum physical expression of a human being, all of our technologists are trained to see that even before a human being can take the assessment, we're trained to be able to see the potential that lies within every human being. So I could do, say, Juan Fernandez, whose image is up, I can do a quick little read just to kind of show the power behind the technology of how I can kind of ascertain a little bit about Juan's greatest potential. Would that be cool?
Oh, you know what? It would be cool with me. I hope Juan,
with his
you've shown
permission,
that
of
it's cool,
course.
but I do need your voice as well. Oh yeah, now you have voice as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I mean, did you want to answer the other ones, or do you want me to ask the question?
I think Wei asked if you don't mind to be read, and then if you don't mind to be read, that would be awesome. And then if you want, you'll get to ask a question afterwards as well.
Okay, yeah, I don't mind to be read. That would be awesome.
Okay, and it's just to give an example of what this technology is based on. It's based on how we uniquely physically show up in the world, right? So when I look at Juan, right, I see there's a lot going on there. One, getting things done is not a problem for him. He's got a doer in him, a taskmaster in him that we call the energetic spoke, which is where the person, and with that comes the crusader, the one who will fight for, you will fight for the underdog. You will defend the underdog. It's built into you. But your ability to do things is also built into that aspect of you as well. However, there's another side of you, however, that is also what we call the sympathetic, there's a sympathetic spoke, which is the natural born healer. It's very chill, very laid back, very approachable and disarming by nature. What that means is most likely you probably met people for the very first time, and 5-10 minutes in, they're like telling their life story, and you're like, whoa, I just met you. But okay, because that's built into you, how you show up in the world. Now, it's a kind of an interesting dichotomy, because the part of you that can get things done, and you probably tell me if this makes sense, part of you that gets things done, you can get things done, but there's a part of you that kind of procrastinates as well, because that's part of that laid back nature of you. And that's an authentic part of you that is prioritizing things to do later so that you can make room for something to do now, right? Society likes to call that procrastination, but if it's authentically inside of you, which it is for you, Juan, then that is something that you can leverage the ability to prioritize a little bit more effectively than someone who is just do and get things done. Now, there's one more part of you that I want to share with everybody, which is a beautiful part of you. It's a very collaborative part of you. We call it the absorptive spoke. It's a processing spoke, but it's also where compassion lives. It's the part of you that really truly thrives, not only from healing others, but also to be able to help another human being, plant, or animal. And that part of you is also very collaborative by nature. And it thrives in, collaborating with others, even though there are times where you can just do things without others around. But more importantly, there is this aspect of you. We've been intermingling for so many centuries now that we're no longer just one single faceted type of beings. We're multifaceted. And so what I just shared about you is aspects of you that is natural to you. And it's just a question of whether or not you are wanting to embrace or fully step into that. Tell me if any of that resonates.
So Wei, amazing, incredible. Everything you say is right on. And I think it's because my personality, like you said, I'm a doer. I like to complete things. My background is IT. I'm an engineer, so all structure. But at the same time, there's a duality in me, because there's a feeling inside that kind of rejects or tries to fight against tasks, project management, having everything set, because I have the feeling part that wants to also be free, wants to be artistic, right? Like you said, when I meet people, I can have a conversation with them, and before the conversation ends, I already know their life. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, you're right on. So impress me right now. You just impressed me, because just from my face, you're able to tell me all these things. Is incredible. Yeah. Amazing.
Well, your unique physical expression of self, and how you carry yourself and everything. I mean, there's a lot more, but and the beautiful thing is the technology basically backs all that up, and then you'll see it in like a numerical format. As an engineer, you would love this technology, because my background is in engineering too, computer science engineering. And so, yes, you can be an engineer and also can help others too.
Amazing.
It's awesome.
So
Juan,
thank you.
You get to ask your question too. I have to be mindful of the time, so please do.
Okay, my question is, Wei, by the way, Christina and Wei, thank you so much for letting us participate and ask these questions and participate in your webinar. My question is, how do you compare this technology to a method that we use a lot, like in corporate world or doing a lot of team collaboration, such as Coldbit? How do you compare the two?
So what I love about our technology is that we play really, really well with others. So in a lot of them Fortune 500 companies, even Fortune 100 companies that we've worked with, they've layered in our technology in addition. Admittedly, there are some companies that realize they don't need to spend their time on the others. They just use ours, right? The challenge with a lot of the other assessments and why the other assessments cannot be patented is because they're primarily psychometric based. And so they're long and they're lengthy because they're trying to make sure that there is a consistency in how people are answering the questions based on their perspectives and opinions. This technology we were able to patent it because we were able to show that it's not based on the volatility of human opinion, but rather on the stability of that person's physical expression of self. It is based on the vehicle that you came into the world with. And it empowers you with the ability, this is how I could use this Ferrari, or this is how I can use this Tesla that I am, or whatever vehicle that you are. This basically reveals to you that this is how you're unique. You don't have to be reliant on nurtured behavior patterns, learned behavior patterns. You can actually go back and just go by the nature of yourself. And so how it plays well with others, it gives basis and fundamentals. See, a lot of these other assessments, they're not completely off track. They're just trying to take different pieces of the elephant to try to make the whole entire elephant. What we introduce is the fundamental objectivity of what it means to be human so that all the other technologies have a place to live. We basically give everything else a home, so to speak. Right.
Awesome. I know you're in a hurry. Really quick, if I were to take a Coldbit test, even before taking the test, for example, the assessment, they wouldn't be able to tell anything about me. And you, by just looking at me, you were able to nail basically my persona. That is just amazing. And as an engineer, I'm already thinking, how is that possible? And all of that. But,
you and I can geek out all day long. We can engineer to engineer anytime.
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
appreciate
so
it.
Thank you so much, Juan, for joining us, and and for allowing an experiment to be conducted.
Demonstrated, right? Being part of the demonstration.
Well, the thing is that sometimes I have to be the guinea pig, and sometimes it's so scary because you don't know what's coming.
You still can.
Well, yes, I'm very curious about this technology, about how it works, what's maybe not so much. I guess the algorithm is pretty complicated. But before we finish, because we don't have a lot of time, I want to ask our audience a very traditional thing, and then I'll ask you one of the questions which has been on my mind. Although we could talk about this technology much more than the little time that we had. So the traditional thing, my dear audience, please leave my guests a heart in the comments below under the video if you're watching it in recording, or in the chat for now. And the question that I want to ask is, sometimes there are qualities about us which are not so much bad habits as probably just the way we are. You mentioned procrastination. Procrastination is definitely one of those complicated matters. We as a society are trying to embrace procrastination because it is part of our nature. In fact, I like to joke that being lazy is probably one of the vehicles of evolution, because at least technological evolution. I mean, whatever we created was because we didn't want to do the work.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
How do people, I'm sure that some results of the test do highlight the qualities which maybe we don't want to acknowledge about ourselves. Be it, maybe you're a procrastinator, maybe you need a chill environment, and we live in the society that idealizes the opposite of that. Do your technologists actually help people embrace those things which are not valued by society, or does it happen naturally? And how do people embrace those things?
Right, great question. A lot of the challenges that we have is our attachment to being accepted and liked by society. for example, there is a particular spoke that actually, Christina, you have. We call it the romantic spoke, which is the peak of feminine energy, right? The thing about that spoke, it is naturally reclusive by nature. So people who have authentic access to that particular part of potential human expression, there is a requisite of alone time. There is an absolute requisite in order to maintain optimal health. And not every human being has it, but those that do struggle a lot because that construct in the world that we live in is that why you stuck up, or why you being antisocial, or where are you, why are you checked out, okay? And all of that are the different types of expressions that can come from someone who has decent amount of access to that romantic spoke. And so when our technologists, they're trained to deliver the results in the most objective way possible, honoring the good, the bad, and ugly, to release the labels of that and to see it as just is, right? Mm-hmm. And when we are in a weak state, to see that as an opportunity to recognize, I don't have to keep going down this slippery slope. This is feedback. What that means is whatever I'm doing right now is not honoring my vehicle of self. And because you know what can, the solution is a lot clearer than what we typically do in the personal development world, is throw everything in the kitchen sink at it and hopefully it works. Mm-hmm. Right? Let me do more meditation, or let me do more of that. But what type of meditation works with someone who's intellectual centered? What type of meditation works with someone who's movement centered, right? When we start to understand how we're uniquely designed and what we look like in the strong state and weak state, we can now stand in ourselves and say, if someone says, what's wrong with you? You can simply say, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm simply in my weak state. I need to go feed my drivers. I'll talk to you later. As simple as that. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, our technologists are trained to deliver in a way that is independent of their own biases. And that's what the technology affords our technologists to be able to do, to be able to leave their biases and their perspectives and opinions at the door and truly show up and serve that human being in front of them in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. With huge regret, I have to start winding up this conversation, unfortunately. I'm incredibly grateful to you, first of all, because, our conversations are always so intellectually stimulating and make me think about things.
So fun.
So I enjoy that. Also, thank you for both talking about this very interesting technology, which has raised a huge amount of curiosity in me, but also while doing that, still giving the value for people who maybe, who just want to keep going their own life without going deeper down this path, because that's incredibly valuable. I mean, if you can learn from a conversation right now, right here, without having to go any further. But for those who are curious, like I am, I strongly recommend to go and try it out. I have no idea how much it costs and what happens later, but it just sounds super interesting to me.
Oh, Christina, I'm gonna take you, when we're done here, I'll take you behind the curtain a little bit, so that way you and I can geek out a little bit. You get backstage pass, okay, for a little bit.
Thank you. We'll have to reconnect for that, because I have my music class starting in 2 weeks,
yes.
in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Now the Mind Value audience found out that one of my hobbies, I do music after work, and I have a teacher coming over. So, but that aside, Wei, thank you so much. It was a huge pleasure. I'm glad we keep talking, and I hope we'll keep talking. And now that you are back to Silicon Valley, you said, right? My book tour is happening in that part of the world.
Yay.
Yeah, it's only in June, but hopefully we'll get to actually meet in physical form as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to reach out, I mean, really easy to find. Just Google me. I'm very open to have conversation. I know there's a lot of questions on here and everything. Feel free to reach out. I'm easy. I mean, I don't feel like I have to put myself on some weird little pedestal or anything like that. Just reach out.
And thank you everyone who joined us in this conversation. It's a pleasure. I have not seen you since last year, so thank you for coming on the show again, and I hope to keep doing that because I enjoy these conversations. And thank you all, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.